Welcome back to Flashback Files, where we help students, recent grads, and young professionals reflect on how early experiences shape confidence, identity, and the way we think about the future. This is part two of my chat with my older brother, Rye. In the first part, we delved into childhood, and this part is going to be based on his career, his decisions to date, what his mindset was with post-secondary, and that's where we're going to start. So, Rye, thanks for all of your time.
Two-parter, let's go.
Yeah. Okay. So you considered different directions after high school, including becoming a flight attendant. Uh, and going into broadcasting. I'm leaving this in. I just want to clarify that there's no issues with a flight attendant as a profession. It's just identifying the fit for Rye, and and the role, and so I'm very curious about this frame of mind. So, what do you remember about?
Come on, man. I easily could have showed people how to put the life preserver on, blow in and thing, undo. I could have done it if it came to that.
Okay, what do you remember about that stage of life, and when you weren't fully sure of the path? And I really want to understand the mindset of you are going to consider being a flight attendant.
Okay, so to understand that, you have to reverse a little. So coming out of high school, the plan wasn't to be a flight attendant. And again, great profession. You do what you need to do, but that wasn't the plan. The plan was initially I had considered sports administration at Durham College or broadcast television, which is what I ended up taking at Mohawk. So I applied to Mohawk and got into the broadcast television course and enjoyed it. Like it was a lot of fun. It was very cool because broadcast television was essentially all the behind the scenes stuff of putting on a TV show. So, cameraman, the guys coiling the cables, the director upstairs, the audio visual guys, the guy up in the room that's bringing graphics up, whether it's a score or the blurb or whatever, all that type of stuff. And, there was a broadcast journalism course, which were the people that wanted to be the on-air talent. And once a week, we would put together a broadcast that would be broadcast just within the school. But, 1 week I was a cameraman. 1 week I got to be the director, which was my favorite one because, again, wanted to be like enjoying that. Was kind of my personality to be a director, but those types of things. So that was the course, and I enjoyed it. Unfortunately, I didn't have my priorities in order. I just didn't focus and apply myself the way I should have. And I was out and about on a Wednesday night we'd be at the Arnie, and Friday night we're at this club and that club, and I just didn't have my priorities in order, and I wasn't really working at the time, and crazy enough, and as weird as it is, and I don't know if they still do this or not, I don't think they should, but in college, you can apply for a credit card, not have much income, and they'll give that to you. So I got that, and, I was using that and didn't have a way to supplement. And eventually the bills started coming in, and didn't have priorities in order and had to make a decision. So that was, I think, when we say September, whatever year coming out of high school, maybe September 98, something like that. So by the springtime, I had made the decision that I think I'm going to have to leave school and go start working or find something else because this isn't quite working out for me. So so this led to the flight attendant thing because, again, not wanting to leave school and, tell your parents, yeah, I'm, I guess, dropping out of school with no plan. So the plan was to be a flight attendant, and this was one of those things. I don't even know. I don't really see them around so much anymore, but this is one of those, little colleges or things that are at a building window that you see, like become a flight attendant, take a course, and you just in this room with some people taking a flight attendant. Next thing I know, I'm taking a flight attendant course, and probably not the greatest idea, and maybe not the greatest fit. I knew it wasn't ideal when I opened the textbook that I paid for, and there was spelling mistakes in the textbook. You just know, I don't know if this is all on the up and up. But ideally, at that point in time, it was basically the fact was I was leaving school, And I just didn't want to go home and tell my parents I was dropping out without a real plan. So that was the plan, which in turn was just kind of to tide me over until I kind of figured out where I was going to go next.
Okay. I want to latch on to the credit card.
Yeah.
I just want to say I can relate. When I was going to Humber, I got the same credit card, $500 credit limit. And this is where advertising really impacted me because all through high school, I remember getting home from school and I'd see Off the Record show with Michael Landsberg,
Yep.
and the keg would sponsor it. And it would be a tagline of great food, great friends. We'll see you tonight. And when I got that credit card and I saw that commercial, like when I
Oh,
had the credit card, I said, yes, you will see me. And
oh,
I went there a couple times and probably had a couple baller meals. And then next thing you know, the bills come and all of that. I'll never forget that. So I can relate there.
yeah. Like again, there's two things. I went to college and without a job or very little income, I was able to get a credit card and a cell phone. I don't know how that worked, but that's what I had. And I didn't have a job.
When you think about your mindset and you think about your think about your future, your career, that sort of thing, and especially because it seemed like you were pivoting. What kind of feelings were you going through? Were you excited? Were you overwhelmed? It sounded like you're trying to figure out one step at a time, like
Yeah.
making the next best decision type thing?
Yeah. So uh, overwhelmed because obviously, like I said, there's bills coming in and I don't have any way to pay them. I've left college, so I don't have any direction now and not really sure what the direction is. Figuring out how am I going to make something of myself, having left school again, having not having money to go to school, and then you can get a bit of OSAP or whatever, but it was kind of a blank. Like I really, really didn't know where I was going to go next.
When you think about somebody that might be in your position and is feeling behind because they don't know exactly what they want to do, what would you want them to hear?
Um, Something will come. This is where you kind of might have to go out of your comfort zone, or you might just have to go get a job again just to be working while you figure things out. Because I mean, I guess again, let's say about home where, and maybe a little more common now, where your parents just let you hang out and not hang out, but a place to stay where you don't have to worry about bills so much and stuff yet. But you just might have to get working because again, I think the worst thing you do is just get comfortable sitting around doing nothing. While you might have good intentions to do something at some point, I don't think being in the habit of just lounging, waiting for something to come along that you really want. Now it's time to get out and start working and being an adult. And again, it might not be in the avenue you thought you'd be in, but at least you're doing something. And doesn't mean on the side and on your off hours, you can still be trying to pursue or find your direction or where you want to take yourself.
Did you actually I had this conversation with Kenya. It's about being a first generation post-secondary student in a way. So mom and dad didn't necessarily get a formal diploma or degree. I know mom attended Mohawk College for a bit for her role at Stelco, but when you think about being a first generation student, like maybe not necessarily having parents to help you navigate that, and maybe you're seeing your friends go to college and university, how did you interpret all of that? Like, not getting maybe the help from your household that maybe others might
Yeah.
have.
Again, I know I never thought of being first generation, second or post secondary student or anything like that. It was just again, this is just the path that you're supposed to take is post secondary, and I liked the course that I chose. I don't know, having had a parent that went to college or university, anything they would have told me would have helped because again, other than I mean, you don't have to go to post secondary to know that you need to apply yourself and get your priorities straight, right? So again, my issue was just not having my priorities straight at the time. I think part of it was had a few friends go off to school. I had some friends that were still in high school, so I had kind of gone to Mohawk on my own. Like I didn't have any friends there. Not I didn't need friends like in my class, but I didn't have there was nobody going there at the time. Mohawk College was kind of in a transition where while when we were young, like it wasn't. I don't think it was really a place that people looked to go or really went to go to. And then They built a residence. It became a little more of a college campus atmosphere almost after I had unfortunately had left. So I was in this weird transition of it. What didn't feel like a college life kind of experience. But aside from that, the main thing was I didn't have my priorities straight. And again, I don't know that a parent that went to post-secondary, a person didn't need to be able to didn't have to have gone to post-secondary to be able to tell you they need to have your priorities straight to be successful at college or university.
Okay. Again, same environment, different experiences. I recall mom saying things like, I was out of the house at 18. You should maybe consider being out of the house at 18. There were some things in terms of independence that if you hear it just as I'm explaining, it might sound cold or callous, but I knew where she was getting. She was like, you need to be independent. You need to figure things out. And I appreciate it looking back because there was nothing going to be handed to us. It's, you got to figure it out kind of thing. So in terms of, I think that impacted the emphasis placed on post-secondary for me. So, you choose the college or university core path. I know you could take general advanced courses in high school at the time. And I started to not maybe consider the advanced courses and go general because I didn't really have a feeling that we could really afford to do the 4-year degree or anything like
Mhm.
that. So there was that part of it, but in general, I knew where she was coming from. It was a matter of like, you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and figuring it out.
Yeah.
Because technically you are an adult at 18. So
Yeah. And I mean, listen, and I think that's the tail end of old school ways, right? Like
yeah.
and I try to be somewhere in the middle of this, but nowadays, the kids get to hang out a little bit longer at home. And part of that is because it is tougher out there to get stuff on your own. But at the same time, we're kind of coddling them a little too much. And, it's at what point you have to start to be an adult, right? Like pay your own insurance, pay your own gas, pay your own cell phone bill, right? Things that are nice to be able to provide for them. Um, but I do feel like, I don't know, there's things that just, if you can't get it yourself, you don't get to have it.
How differently do you think young Ryan made decisions compared to the way you'd make them now? I think you touched on priority straight and that sort of thing, but is there anything you might want to add to that?
Well, you're a little more conscious of your money, that's for sure, right? You don't just run up a card frivolously, especially on partying. One of the worst things you waste money on, but it is what it is. But I think it's just again things you don't learn from. It's just being a little more financially conscious about your decisions with money, and just I wish I just could have had a little more direction. Like now I have a little. Well, I mean, obviously as an adult, you set your sights on things you want to do and where you want to be in a few years and whatever. And I wish I just had a little more foresight at that time to really just pursue and just get the priorities right and pursue where I was the thing I was doing. Because again, I don't know what would have led me, but I did enjoy it, right? And that's one of the things that's too bad. When you get your job later on, you want to be doing something that you enjoy. Like not very often does anyone get to do a job that they enjoy. Not a lot of people like to go to work, but you don't want to be miserable going to work. But that I think I would have really, really enjoyed.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to your first job.
First job,
Foot Locker.
Foot Locker.
What did that experience teach you about what you do and do not like about jobs?
So Foot Locker, which was a great job. I was very fortunate to get it because I got that summer of grade 9. So I was only 14. So, it's not easy at 14 to get a job, let alone at a mall at a Foot Locker. But um, that was a great, I mean, way down to Center Mall. So I had to travel all the way down to Center Mall. You take the bus down all the time and start working again. You start interacting. I think, and we've talked about this before, and I talked about my wife Katie and stuff like that, about it turned me off of sales. Uh, And in hindsight, I mean, not now, but I may personality wise, may have been a decent salesman in the right avenue. But Foot Locker was just like, someone walks to the door and you got to go right up to them. And right away they say, I'm just looking. And you just go stand over in the corner. And then, you walk into the back room and they got a board on the wall and your name's on the wall and they have a number on how many shoes you're supposed to sell tonight. And not only how many shoes, how many multiples did you get? And multiples was you sold a pair of shoes. Did you sell them socks or shoe spray with it? Because you needed to bat a certain average. I think the average was like 350. So for every 10 sales, three of them better be multiples. Those are the types of things. I didn't love that pressure, especially because most of the time, like they wanted you to greet somebody as you came in, and I understand that. But as a customer, you just naturally feel like just leave me alone. I'll let you know when I'm ready for you. And that was what I would have liked is just lay back. I'm there. As soon as you question, bang, I'm there. But it was just the way they made you interact. You had to get shot down real quickly. I'm just looking because I know that's the answer. That's of course that's what you're doing. But I just didn't love the pressure of selling a certain amount of shoes and getting the multiples, and it kind of turned me off of sales. And I never touched or looked at or considered any type of sales job ever again.
Got a little jaded. So you transitioned pretty quickly to KFC.
Yeah, big pivot right to the fast food chain. So because I at Full Locker, we just eventually my manager came to the conclusion that this just wasn't going to work because it wasn't for me. So again, I'm out of work for a little while. I just started driving, and I needed to pay the insurance and maintain a car. So a friend of mine who had worked at KFC for a little while put in a good word for me, and he worked there. And there was a few other people that I went to high school with that worked at this KFC. It was on concession at the time, and I went to KFC and became a cooked chicken man. Was slinging chicken for a couple of years back there, which wasn't easy work either. It's greasy and scary and definitely different than selling shoes at an air conditioned Foot Locker, that's for sure.
Yeah, and you actually went from cook to supervisor pretty quickly, didn't you?
So I mentioned that to you, but it was like in quotation supervisor. The story behind that is that store on concession was closing, and the manager at the time was working between concession and Lambert Mall. And she was kind of a little overwhelmed and overworked, and she needed some help at Lambert Mall. So I said I would come there and help. Again, I was just a worker, but I said the only way I'm going to do it is if you give me one of the nice white shirts. And the nice white shirts is what the manager and the supervisors wore. So I say supervisor, but store managers wore and assistant managers wore nice white shirts. I guess it felt like it was because I'm going into the mall. Now I'm at the mall. People are going to see you. Like I want the nice white shirt at least to make it look like I'm somebody at KFC. So I don't even know if that actual, the higher ups at KFC knew. Like I was closing the store. I was never like they were never having the record books that I was ever trained to close a store. But she showed me, and I was able to do it. And again, they were stretching her thin, and she did what she needed to do. And fortunately, again, being responsible, I was able to. It's not again not rocket science, so I was able to do that. But the stipulation was, I'll come there, but I'm not wearing the old team shirt. I want the nice white collar shirt, and I'll come in there. So that's why I call myself moving to a manager or supervisor. But it wasn't official, but I got the shirt. So if you walk by, you might think I was.
I think I remember the shirt. What did those early jobs teach you about work ethic that might still show up today?
Just basic stuff, right? Like be reliable, be dependable, um, be easy to work with, be willing to learn, be willing to help. You know, every now and then within the pay scale, don't be afraid to go above and beyond. You don't need to do other people's roles, but sometimes, especially with a customer, you just want to be a little extra helpful and be courteous and just be an all around good person. But it's mainly just being reliable and dependable, and willing to work hard when you're on the clock.
Do you think people, maybe teenagers now, underestimate how much jobs like that shape you?
Um, I don't think they underestimate, but I think they don't realize until they get it. You know what I mean? They might not know what it all entails, right? Until you gotta get up for work and you gotta go to work. And tonight I can't go to that party because I gotta work. And this just learning how that, there's gonna be things that you miss. Like not everything is fun and games when it's time to work. And when you see these things that you want, whether it be a car, a shirt, or you want a better plan on your phone, like my boys, they got the minimum. When they want way more data and stuff, I'll pitch in the same amount I'm pitching, but you want upper data, you got to buy that. So when you want those things, you got to go to work. And when you go to work, there's things you got to sacrifice to do that. So, but if you want nice things that are better things, you got to work it. Gotta go to work.
You did some warehouse work. Can you just help us understand where, like, how old you were and where you were with post secondary with the warehouse?
So, I'm trying to remember now. I did the layout for you, and now I can't remember exactly how I pinpointed that, but that was, I feel like that was another, I think that was coming out of flight attendant, which didn't work out. And again, not wanting to just be laying around, just had to get a job. So this was a newspaper ad, just hiring. So actually, quite a few of my friends worked here. Some that were working full time to pay to go to university the next year. Some that just needed a job, but a bunch of us worked here. And they had shipping, receiving in an area called non-con. Non-con was the toughest area in the warehouse because this was a Walmart warehouse. So this was like big bags and stuff that couldn't go on a conveyor belt and be sent to where it was. You had to just lift it and take it. So me and one of my friends from high school, we actually worked in this area together, and we had a great time because there was all walks of life at this job. You know what I mean? There was kids off the university. There was just all walks of life here. So we had a good time, kind of people watching there and stuff like that. Um, Now it didn't last very long because it was just not for me, especially when I tried to advance to a better job by becoming a forklift operator because it was a guy always booting around on a forklift and he was lifting skids and moving around and it looked like a little more fast paced, a little better. So I did the training for that, but for some reason nobody ever got me on one of those machines, and then that didn't work out. Lost,
Sorry, this is just after flight attendant.
I believe so. I don't know if you remember the timeline, but I think that was coming out of flight attendant and just the job I need to get to not just be sitting around the house doing nothing.
Okay, got it. What did a role like that mean for you in terms of just grinding and maybe the fact that you might not see interact with people every day? Like, was it a pretty isolating role that you were in at that time?
No, like I said, there was a group of us slinging these bunk beds and stuff all over the place. So we were all there. If anything, the mindset was like, I got to figure out what's going on and where I'm going. Like this is not the end. You know, this is not where I'm going to be. Just where am I going next and how am I going to get there?
Okay, and from what I understand, you went back to KFC.
Yeah. So I left there. Now I just, again, had nothing going on, didn't know what I was going to do. But again, got to start working. So I went back to another KFC on Upper Gage because I had experience and I went there and I just worked in the back again. But I kind of worked all over at that one because, excuse me, usually the guys in the back cooking chicken just did that. You had the people that packed and the people that worked the front counter, and generally each person stuck to their own area. But because I had done a concession, the back stuff, packing and cooking, and at the mall, I had been on the cash register. I was pretty useful there because they could kind of stick me wherever. I was pretty, I could be anywhere they needed me to be there, so I was pretty useful. So it was pretty easy for me to get in there. But again, I worked there for a while, but not where I wanted to be or what I wanted to be doing. Obviously, I wanted and expected more of myself. I just wasn't sure how I was going to get there.
Okay, returning back to KFC, did you feel like you were taking a step backward or more of like just a part of the process? It sounded like you were frustrated with the fact that you weren't where you thought you should be.
Oh yeah, definitely. I definitely had um, thought I would be other places doing other things at that point. And I guess I would necessarily say a step back, but wasn't going forward. It was just not where I wanted to be, and just where I needed to be at the time.
What did that experience teach you about humility? Because I imagine you have these wheels spinning, right? And you're in one spot, you want to move forward. So dealing with mentally, like you wanting to be ahead, but also having to be present and showing up for the thing that you're doing that's right in front of you.
Yeah, because can't remember quite how old I was, early 20s, I guess. But now you're starting to see peers finishing school, starting to get jobs that had they were trying, going after and things like that. You see some guys, some peers just get lucky and find a job. You see some peers who get jobs through their dads or uncles or whatever, and just people just getting jobs that are paying a little better and doing bigger things. And so you start again getting a little nervous and just trying to wonder, where am I going to go?
So where's you? I think you're hinting at pressure to keep up with others.
I wouldn't call it pressure to keep up with others. I wouldn't say that, but I just feel like falling behind. Like I guess it is keeping up. Like I mean, I'm not trying to match what they have or anything like that, but they're just doing the things that we're the age that we're at felt like those are the things we're supposed to be doing, and I wasn't doing them yet.
Okay. So you eventually moved into traffic control at Almond?
Yeah, so traffic controls like you see the guys who driving up and they got a stop slow sign. I had to do a little bit of that, but the majority of what I did was if you're driving on the highway and a lane starts to close with a bunch of barrels, that's forcing you over because the lane's closed. So I worked for the company that did those closures. So I was out there dropping barrels and closing the lane, putting up signs, and that was a interesting job.
Were you concerned for your safety in the early days and maybe even throughout?
I think eventually I probably got a little too comfortable out there, but definitely, because at the time the thought was when I was looking for a job, I was like, I just was looking for whatever reason, I was looking for a job in paper that just required a G class driver's license. Um, Thinking maybe I could be, I don't know, a student driver teacher or just something, a delivery guy, just something with the G class license just to change it up. Because a lot of stuff was DZ, but G class. So I found they just called for it. Actually called for it. We went out, and I went out, and then had no idea what the job was. And then next thing I know, they're like, "Yeah, we're out on the highway dropping barrels," and it was pretty nerve wracking for sure at first because cars are flying by, and excuse me, you've never seen a job like this or even know anything like this, and you're seeing it for the first time live and in action is pretty interesting.
It sounded like you had a willingness to do whatever. So what was driving you to be open to very
Well,
diverse roles? It seems like, was it the
at
pay that appealed to you or just
Yeah, at this point, it was just trying to make a few dollars more than I was already making. So again, obviously, higher paying jobs, you need a certain amount of qualifications to go for certain things. So they're not abundant, but you can find them out there. So that at that point, that's what it was just trying to find something that was paying a little bit more money, which this was.
and you mentioned almost becoming a roofer until you got a call. So what was that trajectory looking like for you?
So again, doing this job, the traffic control, basically companies hire us to close while they have to do their work in the road. So I can't remember what year, but it was November-ish, and we were working for a company called Stacy down in London, and we were doing closures for them while they were doing the work they needed to do. And again, I'm out there, I'm working hard, doing what I need to do, and whatever, and didn't think anything of it. That job ended. So while I was doing the closures, that wasn't like a full-time gig. What I would also do in Hamilton is I would drive down at the Fasco. I drove a truck with a big magnet on the back. I would just drive around, pick up scrap metal, and go to the little yard where you dump it and drop it off there and just do that. So I was doing that for 12 hours a day, 4 off. Again, just not an ideal job, but not too bad because I was on my own, just in a truck, no one bothered me or whatever. But eventually, again, not loving this job and button heads with the guy who was in charge because he wanted me to do things a certain way. And I would just do things my way. And eventually we were going to part ways. So I said, you know what? I don't think it's going to work out. How about you just lay me off? And again, I'll just back to the drawing board. So I'm on layoff for the winter. And again, when you're on EI, you get a bit of money, but it's not anything to write home about and not anything you should rely on for a extended period of time. So through the winter, I did that. Come springtime, again, time to gonna be a bum, gotta find a job. So looking and looking, and just happened to be talking to a guy who, and I know I mentioned roofing, but it was actually framing houses. And again, we grew up in a house. Again, our dad, we didn't work with tools. Like, I did a little bit of DT in design technology, woodworking, and with Mr. Windsor and Burkholder for grades 6 and 7. And that was the extent of my woodworking experience. So, but there was a guy that was willing to take me on because I always felt like I could learn. If you show me, I could learn, but I don't know a whole lot. And literally had a conversation with a guy. He said, talk to my boss. I talked to him on like a Thursday or Friday, and he said, you're going to start on Monday. So, okay, I actually went to the library on Saturday and I bought a couple books about framing houses just to try and have some sort of knowledge. And literally on Sunday, I got a phone call from a guy named Les, who I credit for a lot of kind of where I am now. He was the guy that was doing the road closures for that worked at Stacy. He called me and said, "Do you want to come work for us? You know, you look like you were a hard worker out there and blah blah blah." And big, the framing was going to pay decent, but these guys were paying almost $10 more. So I called the guy who offered me the job, and I thanked him and I apologized because he was willing to take a chance on me because I literally had no experience and probably no business framing houses, but he was willing to train me and do whatever. So I thanked him and apologized to him profusely to let him know I really, really appreciate the opportunity, but this is a union gig, paying this. And he said, man, I get it. You do what you got to do, which was good. But I did feel bad because was willing to do that. But Les called me. So I was literally a day away from becoming a framer. He called me and off I went to work for a company called Stacy Electric. Their main gig was traffic signals and street lights. And I did a thing called loops, which are little sensors that change the signals. But that's how I almost was a framer and then managed to work elsewhere.
Wow. And just to put it into context, you spent just over a decade at Stacy Electric.
Yeah. Yes, it was about 11 years. And unfortunately, the owners wanted to sell and they sold to a guy who bought the business with not good intentions. And Stacy I was there fortunately to celebrate. They were around for over 100 years. And this guy bought the company and come to find out after he's known for this kind of a Weasley guy, buying companies and purposely running them into the ground and bleeding them dry. And it was very unfortunate because this was a family owned company and really great company to work for. And it was too bad that this guy got his greasy hands on it and ran it into the ground.
So you were there towards the end of it then?
I was there right to the very end.
Oh.
Right to the very end where, seeing all kinds of things happen. We had trucks that were getting repaired that the mechanics wouldn't release them because they weren't getting paid. We couldn't get supplies. We were lucky to be getting paychecks. Fortunately, we were getting our paychecks and that's about it. But this guy really did a number on it. And it was really unfortunate because it was a good place. And again, 100 years, they obviously did a good job if you're around for 100 years, right?
Yeah. I want to go back to that call from Les. So what I understand is he saw you from the periphery, like what you're doing from another company, working hard, showing up, doing all the things that were being asked of you. If you were to maybe speak to somebody that is younger, who is in a direct role and maybe giving some guidance around showing up the way maybe you did, can you give any guidance in terms of showing up and maybe how it might tie into people are watching when you don't think they are? If that makes
Well,
sense.
that's what I was going to say is it just goes to show that you never know when you're doing something, who's watching it and how it goes. I can remember, I know specifically because Les hired me and there was a guy, his name was Max, that worked with them. And Max was my partner when I got there for quite a long time. And he told me that he said he remembers because he was working with Les at the time when I was doing the closures up that they remember me like. So the way the job kind of worked was they're working on the highway and there's a point where they need to move to the other side of the highway. So police stop traffic and you have to flip all the barrels over so that the closure kind of flips. So, and it's not something that can take an hour. Like you got to hustle. So he just said they remember seeing me like running, moving barrels, running, and just hustling. And it's kind of part of the job, but he told me that that's what they remember seeing. And I think that's just one of those things that, again, you don't know who's watching or what they're seeing, but they just saw the effort that was being put in. And, again, a simple job doesn't take any diplomas or anything, just literally just moving barrels, but they're the way it needs to be done in a certain speed. And I guess, again, the effort they saw me put in on a day-to-day basis, day and night, we were doing days and nights and stuff like that, just managed to make an impression and it worked out.
Cool. I was just wondering, I don't know how detached you were from the role, because it is what it is. You wanted to go to school for broadcasting and then you're doing that role, but you had a sense of care and intent behind what you were doing, whatever it was, right? Was there something that you were telling yourself to be committed to the role?
Again, not that I was specifically saying that, but that was the job. It's got to be fast. There's police and guys behind us, literally, a few hundred meters behind us, that have stopped traffic on the highway. Like it can't take 25 minutes to do this job. Like you have this portion of the job. Now listen, once that's done, the other part of the job was to just sit in the truck until it was time to pick up the barrels again. So, it's not like this was like for 8 hours straight. Like it's, short stints of movement, and then I'm kind of hanging out, which was kind of nice too. So, but when the time came, it was time to bust ass. So, bust your ass.
You're the Hussein Bolt of traffic controller.
Traffic control.
When you landed with Stacy and you spent 11 years with the company, what did you have a sense of relief? Like maybe it's year 2, year 3, year 4, because I'm thinking about the guy that returned to KFC on a second stint. Like, what is going on? Now you got maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years under your belt with one company that's paying you well. Did you have just a
Oh, the relief was instant. As soon as it was, here's your wage and you're in a union, it was just like, okay, again, this is not where we started. Again, the idea was broadcast television or sports and man, maybe flight attendant. And here I am here in a construction kind of role, which again was not anything I was familiar with. But again, having, the security of a good wage in a union job was very relieving.
what time in the morning were you getting up for this job?
So I was now, okay. So I was getting up. I was getting up at about 5:15, 5:30, 5:15 to 5:30. So that was definitely a huge adjustment.
That's Monday to Friday, no ifs, ands, or buts. For maybe a younger listener that is maybe taking on a job that has a similar wake up schedule, did you have anything about? Uh, did you make any necessary adjustments to your routine the night before as you were transitioning into getting up at 5:30 in the morning?
Well, this is where, again, going back to where I didn't have my priorities straight. Now my priorities had to get straight. Like, again, there was a year and a half stint there while I'm doing all these mediocre jobs, and I'm also in my early 20s. But we're hanging out. Like I could name you a day of the week and what bar we were going to. It was 5 days out of the week. We're here, we're there. So, but when you got to get up at 5 in the morning, you can't be out till 2 in the morning. So that quickly changed. Definitely an adjustment to be like, okay, Monday to Friday, I don't do these types of things anymore because I got to get up too early. So it was just like priorities had to be straightened out, and that's what happened.
And that discipline transferred into those that needed rides from you. I know you helped a couple, maybe one person at least, get a job there. And you either were in the truck with them, like if they were ready to go at a certain time, or you were gone, you left.
Yeah. I mean, that even stemmed back to high school because I was one of the first drivers, and I was like, yeah, it was known. It was a 30-second rule. Like when I pull up, it's 30 seconds and I'm leaving. Like, I'm coming there. So especially with work, like I'm not running late. Again, there's certain things that you got to do, and you got to be on time. You got to be reliable. You got to be dependable. So I'm not sacrificing what I've finally accomplished and created for myself as far as how I'm known as a worker, because you not getting up, you're not moving fast enough, you're not doing your thing.
That it's interesting because in the first episode we talked about mom and dad. I don't know if we brought up dad's routine of getting up early, but both of them, mom and dad, were very much sticklers for being on time.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Dad, he again for all the stuff that he did, he had perfect attendance awards. Like he never missed a day. And again, he's the guy that used to like to have a few beers at night, and who knows, but he was a 4:30 a.m. and he like clockwork. He's up and gone to work like every day, like literally perfect attendance awards. Like he didn't miss a day. So maybe that comes from there. It's just again, you start working, or you work as a team, or you work with people, you understand like you have to be reliable and dependable, and that starts with being on time.
Yeah. When you were again had a couple of years under your belt with Stacy Electric, were there moments during those years where you question your path, or did it feel like you were continually building something? So being involved in a union, every year it goes by, you get seniority and that sort of thing, maybe pay increases. where were you in terms of like having a zoom out view of your life and wanting to continue with Stacy, maybe long term retiring there, or thinking about maybe I want to do this based on the skills that I've learned?
I mean, whenever you're working somewhere, you're always looking at other jobs. Again, this was labor intensive, early mornings. You're always seeing what else is out there. But at the end of the day, I was pretty comfortable where I was. The only real decision I needed to make, or other opportunities that presented themselves, was because at a company like that, you have laborers that are in a labor union, and you have electricians that are in the electrical union. And the only thing that I would get asked sometimes is if I wanted to become an electrician, which would have required an apprenticeship and pursuing that avenue. And I thought about it because, again, it pays a little more. It does open a little more doors as far as you can do, side work on weekends and different types of things. Whereas like a laborer, you're just a laborer. You know what I mean? Listen, the money pays great. You're in a union. There's nothing wrong with it. You can make really great money, but that's all you're going to do. If you become an electrician, it does open up a few more doors. The only thing for me was at that time, again, now mid 20s or whatever, I'm out living on my own. I got apartments. I got bills to pay for. I'm making a good wage. You go be an apprentice, you have to go down, start at a certain wage. And as much as it probably would have benefited me 15 years down the road, at that point in time, I just couldn't afford the pay cut for the couple of years it would have taken to get to that point. So I just chose to ride it out.
Interestingly, doesn't Keegan talk about becoming an electrician?
He has recently started discussing that in the last year or so, just again, as he tries to figure out where to go and what to do, because we talk about it, because Katie and I were, listen, while it's great, post-secondary should always be a goal and there's good things that can come from it. I just don't feel like I don't want to make it as necessary or pertinent as it used to be. Like you just feel like you have to do that to have good things happen, because I just don't feel like that's true, depending on the path you're choosing, right? Like, and again, people are free to take whatever, but I truly feel, in a book that's this thick of courses you can take, I really feel like only this many of them are really going to lead to something in that avenue. The other ones, you'll have a diploma, which is great to have, and it's always good to put on your resume. But the chances of you working in that field, I think, are very slim. And that's just how I feel. So I don't necessarily think that you have to go that route. There's other avenues you can take to earn a good wage and have a respectable position and stuff like that. So we don't put a lot of pressure on that. And by all means, you want to do it, I'm not going to say not to. My only thing will be like, I just really want to make sure you're taking something that has a really good chance of ending up being something. Because in my mind, it's just, other than that, you're going into starting your life in debt for a career you're probably not even going to end up in. So that's the tough navigation of post-secondary, the way
Yeah.
I look at it.
And we're all built differently. We all have different avenues. There's some people that don't have post secondary that have built $1 billion companies. There's no tried and true path.
No,
It's up
I
to the
just
individual.
think post-secondary for a long, long time was just like the carbon copy of what you're supposed to do. You know what I mean? High school, university, job, married, kids, and that's the carbon copy. And I just feel like those times are a little bit changing, and you don't have to do that route. There is other ways to go. If you dedicate yourself, apply yourself, and pursue different opportunities and work hard.
Yeah. Okay. So in your current role, you've gone from laborer to you've transitioned from laborer to project manager and estimator. This is something I'm super interested in because you were boots on the ground, and now you're in the office. What's that transition been like for you?
So just to go back, so Stacy went under, and again, some people had already jumped ship as it was sinking to go to other companies that are similar to what they did. And again, to the point of working hard and being a good worker and having a reputation of a good worker, there was a few companies basically calling, because the workers that are in this field are there's not a whole, I mean, there's a lot, but it's not like a ton that have this certain experience. So the other companies were happy to pluck guys and get experienced guys. So there was some companies calling, but again, I was working out of Toronto, and there was a couple of companies there. And then fortunately, a guy that I had worked for who had left and gone to work somewhere else was calling from a company that was a little closer to where I live. And he said, "Do you want to do what you're doing? Labor and cutting loops for us?" And I said, "Sure." So again, that was around 2014. So was there, and again, another 10 years, like you said, boots on the ground. And then last year, this same boss they were discussing. He just happened to mention in passing that they're going to hire a project manager, a junior project manager or something. And I said, hey, I would like to do that because again, I've done that job and it's a labor job, and again, there's not a lot of opportunities to do these types of things outside of that. But I've always felt capable, and again, I always felt like if you teach me, I can learn. So I said, why don't you let me take a stab at it? And again, in all the work that we do, if the bubble's this big, my 20 years in the business was this little bit. So it was going to be a tough task because now I needed to be, I'm trying to work in project managing, estimate a lot of work that I'm familiar with, but not as hands-on with as I was with the little portion that I did. But that was a transition, was just, he mentioned it and I said, hey, why not let me take a stab at it before we go out? And he said, I didn't really think of that. And he discussed it with somebody else. And we met and we talked and they were in agreement. And I just finished a year in the office, and definitely different than boots on the ground. You see the other side of things that you don't consider, when you're just boots on the ground, you're just out there working, but when you're in the office, you have to consider what things cost. And, when you're working, you want as many hours as you can, but on this side, it's like, okay, can we do this in a little less hours? So it's try not to forget where you came from, but trying to do your job the right way as well.
Was there, once you were kind of considered as a candidate, did you ever have any kind of hesitation or fear that you could actually take on the role?
Not prior to, but once I got into it, and even right now, a year in, it's tough. And like I said, but they've been completely supportive, and they've said like it takes a couple of years to really get to know what you're doing. So that gives me a little bit of solace right now that I'm a year in, but there's still a little bit of leeway for learning and understanding that I don't need to be perfect at my job. But there is some days, like I said, I've never had a job where my brain hurts, and now I come home and sometimes my brain hurts.
So you went from maybe everything else hurting because of the physicality of the job to just your brain hurting.
Just my brain. And again, now I have to also be a little more conscious of being active because again, I was a labor job. So I'm not the fittest guy, but it was at least a labor job. So it was helping me fight those calories. Whereas now, I'm sitting. So now I have to try and consciously find ways I haven't done a great job of it, but I have to find consciously ways to be a little more active because I'm not quite as active during the day now.
How are you with office small talk?
Fine. Cause again, it's just a few of us. And again, the guys that I work with there, I've known for a long time because they've come from a lot of the same places I did. So, it's fine. You chit chat. Got kids in sports is the easiest thing, right? What games do you have this weekend? What you got coming up? And that's what it is. Blue Jays, Raptors, sports talk. It's the easiest way to get around it.
What role did resilience play in your career, especially in the early years? I'm thinking about, again, that mental struggle of I'm not where I think I should be or where I need to be.
Man, it's just, like I said, you just do good at the job you're doing. Stay positive that something will come along. And again, it might not always. I will admit that it's a little bit of luck that I had. And, you don't really want to lead your life and career up to luck and chance, but sometimes that's how it goes, right? And it was a little bit of that, but it was just, I think the main thing was just whatever I was doing, I was just doing a good job. So that was the tag that stuck with me, and that's what made Les call me, and that's what made my current boss call me, is because I was just whatever I was doing it well, and I could be relied upon to do that.
What did success mean to you now compared to when you were younger?
Well, I mean, when you're young, you think, you're not necessarily rich, but, just having the most perfect job. Like I think about always, there was a stage when I was younger. I didn't know what, and it's funny because as we talked about, broadcast television and the other careers I talked about for a while there, my job that I always pictured, I didn't know what the actual job was, but I always pictured, in the movies, there's always a guy, he's in his office. It's a big office. He's in a desk. He's got a little bar that someone comes in and they're always sharing a drink. That's where I always pictured myself. I don't know what my job was, CEO, sales. I don't know what I was doing, but I always thought that's where I was going to be. I was going to be in a big office, having a drink with someone coming in, doing a deal or whatever it might be. Um, but as far as success when you're young, you hope you're going to be doing something fun and enjoyable, which again is a lot of times wishful thinking, but that's what I had hoped. And, you just want a good job, nice house, a car or whatever. And today that's what I have. Roof over our house, roof over our heads. The kids are, I believe, happy. I mean, they're always going to see friends that have a little more, but I think they're good where they are, whether they believe it or not. Success is just having, to me, a happy house with kids that are happy, and I'm able to go golfing once a week. That's happiness for me now.
Nice. Keegan, it's very consistent with Keegan. I was asking him a similar question. He said, I'm good. Like, I don't need anything. I'm good, which was a really cool perspective from a kid his age, where, especially in a social media environment.
Yeah. And I heard him say that. And again, as a parent, you're happy to hear that, because again, they don't always let you know that because you're asking for more. So you just hope that that's how they feel. And listen, I get it. Excuse me. There's always going to be somebody that has a little bit more or a lot more, cliche, whatever. So there's always somebody that has a lot less. So you be happy with what you got.
Okay, we're going to move into a little bit of reflection, and then we're going to get into lightning round. So you've been a trooper. I appreciate your continued time.
More Keegan now. He's waiting to go to bed.
Oh, Keegan, I'm sorry, man.
That's all good.
When you think about the boy you were, what part of him is still very much alive in the person you are today?
I guess the social hangout guy. Again, Katie, she always not gets on me, but she always says, like, even last weekend, we were away for a basketball tournament, and the parents were all hanging out down in the lobby. And not that I consciously do this, but I'm one of the last ones to leave. And she always said, "You're always the last one to leave the party." And when we go to weddings, it's like we're there till the lights go on and that kind of thing. I just social party and hanging out.
Makes sense. If you could go back and talk to your teenage self, what would you tell him?
Probably, there's one thing I think about. I mean, there's a million things you can tell yourself as young. There's one little job opportunity I had around grade 11. A little unorthodox, and it really would have avoided all of that transition jobs that I had. I was at a place called National Steel Car, and our neighbor actually somehow got talking. He was going to get me in. I went for an interview, and it went well. And I remember they asked me, like, they were going to just give me part-time on weekends. It was perfect. They said, such a dumb decision I made. They're like, we just need you to come in for a week of training. And I remember I said, oh, man, got volleyball, school volleyball. And it just would have been 2 games that I missed. It wasn't like, you know what I mean? Like 2 grade 11 high school volleyball games for a job that just would have I just would have had a bit more money. Probably would have helped me get through college because I wouldn't have needed to leave. You know what I mean? It was a real tough stuff. It was a bonehead decision I made. And if I had to go back to tell us to take that job and take the week off and miss the game against McNabb and Barton this week.
Last official question, and then we'll get in a lightning round, and then Keegan can go to bed. What do you hope your own kids one day understand about who you were and what shaped you?
Just, again, understanding, because again, I even though Keegan says he appreciates all that he has or whatever, I think sometimes they don't know what they have, so again, we weren't suffering as kids or whatever, but I wish we had a little more. So we've done our best to provide a little more than I had. Sometimes I feel like it's too much. I go back and forth on, you want them to have better. And of course I do, but sometimes there's too much and they lose focus or appreciation for the little things, right? A lot of times, they get something and shiny new toy is good for a week. And then it's like, okay, what's next? Whereas when we were kids, it's like that shiny toy was our toy for like a year, maybe a year and a half. Like there was no what's next. And if there was a what's next, we knew it was Christmas. There's no like middle of the year, random June, here you go, here's Christmas, a birthday, a significant thing where I think these guys lose sight of that. Things just come, oh, my shoe has a hole, I need a new shoe. I lost my basketball. I need a new basketball. I dropped my phone. I need a new phone. Like it's just like that. So just want them to understand that it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Sleepovers, man. I can't sleepovers. You're, Kaya and Chloe. Oh, every weekend if we left. You know what I mean? I remember sleepovers were in an occasion,
Yeah.
back in the
This, and sleepovers, they were a little more, but even McDonald's. Like I don't know if I could count on one hand how many times we went to McDonald's. Now McDonald's, well, I mean, it's just a lot more often. It's a lot more often. Like I said, that was a treat.
Yeah. Okay. Lightning round. You got to answer these as quickly as you can. Ready?
Yep.
One word to describe your childhood.
Awesome.
One word to describe yourself as a teenager.
Uh, social.
One thing you were really confident about growing up.
Um, sports.
Sport you loved the most growing up.
Basketball.
Sport you think shaped you the most.
Probably karate.
A moment from childhood that still makes you laugh.
Quickly, just this one, it makes me think of, I think Jay had a candy like this. We were sitting talking. You kicked it out of his hand, caught it, and ate it. He was bragging about his candy. He just did a kick, and it just happened to land right in your hand. He just ate it on him.
I remember that. A moment from childhood that still sticks with you for a different reason.
Sticks with me for a different reason. Let's come back to that one. Unless it's the last one.
Something you learned from being the oldest that you still carry today.
Leading by example.
Who influenced you most growing up and why?
I think mom. She was just caring, nice, worked hard, and liked to have a good time.
One thing you thought mattered a lot back then that doesn't matter now.
My clothes.
Something your younger self would be surprised about you in life today.
Having worked in construction for almost 20 years.
Something your younger self would be proud of.
The life I've created for my family.
Amazing. We'll end it there. You spent a lot of time here. To the listeners, this was a two-parter, could be a three-parter, but I spent 2.5 hours. I think we're going on maybe 3 to get this done.
That was good.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You said a lot there. I'm positive we have a lot to share with the listeners in this one. So thanks for your time. Keegan, shout out to you for dedicating your room for 3 hours.
My bad. The old man's computer wouldn't fire up. Take it to the old. Figures the oldest guy that's been on the show couldn't get his old computer working.
Oh, go figure, right? Okay. Thanks for the time.
All right. Bye, everyone.
As I reflect on this second conversation with Rye, what stands out isn't a perfectly mapped out career path. It's actually the opposite. There's some uncertainty and pivots, and it's the moments where there wasn't a clear path, just the next step. And I think that's something a lot of people need to hear, because when you look at Rye's journey from starting in broadcasting at school to leaving school to working retail, fast food, warehouses, traffic control, there's no straight line. There's no moment where everything suddenly clicks and the path becomes obvious. Instead, what you see is movement. You see someone willing to work even when the job isn't ideal. You saw someone figuring things out in real time, not from a blueprint, but from experience. And one of the biggest themes that came through in this conversation is the idea that direction doesn't always come first. Sometimes it's built through action. Rye didn't wait until he had it all figured out. He just continued to work, show up. And in doing that, he created opportunities, sometimes without realizing it in the moment. That moment where Les calls him, that doesn't happen by accident. It comes from effort and consistency and from being the kind of person who does the job properly, even when it's just moving barrels. Because the reality is, people are watching. Opportunities don't always come from resumes, sometimes they come from reputation. Another theme that stood out is the idea of feeling behind. There are moments in this conversation where Ryan talks about seeing his peers move ahead, finishing school, starting careers, getting opportunities, and wondering where he fits into all of it. Not necessarily competing, but questioning. And I think that's one of the most honest parts of this discussion, because that feeling of being out of sync, of not being where you should be, is something almost everyone experiences at some point. But what Rise shows is that being off track doesn't mean you're stuck. It just means your path looks different. And over time, that path started to take shape, not through one big decision, but through actually a series of small ones where he chose to keep working and be reliable and choosing to take opportunities when they came, where eventually choosing to step into something new, even when it was uncomfortable. That transition from labor to project management is another key moment, because even after 20 years in one lane, there was still growth. There was still learning and discomfort and moments where your brain hurts, as he put it. And that's important because it shows that growth doesn't stop once you figure it out, it just changes form. And maybe the biggest shift in this episode is how Rye defines success today. So, in the beginning of his career, success might have looked like the big office, perfect job, the image of what life is supposed to be. But now it looks like stability, family, and being able to provide and having a life that feels good, not just one that looks good. And that evolution ties directly back to our first episode with Rye. Because when you think about everything we talked about in that first conversation, we touched on identity, confidence, environment expectations. You can see how those early experiences shaped the way Rye approached work, responsibility, and ultimately life, where there was discipline, work ethic, and independence showing up. Even the social side of who he is, it all carried through. So when you put both episodes together, you really get as a full picture, not just of what someone does, but how they become who they are, from childhood to uncertainty to building something real over time. And if there's one thing I take away from this entire two-part conversation, is that there's no single path, there's no perfect timeline, and you don't need to have everything figured out to start moving forward. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is just show up, do the work, and stay open to where it might lead. Because even if it doesn't look like it at the time, you're still building something. I laugh because with these two episodes that were put together, Rye did the work. He spent 3 consecutive hours, it could have been another 3, having this discussion. And I appreciate the time, Rye. Thank you. As always, if this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And until next time, keep reflecting, keep learning, and keep moving forward. We'll see you on the next one.